Now we've got the host of Cuomo on News Nation, Chris Cuomo. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, and thank you for the forbearance with my setting. I'm visiting someone in the hospital, but I wanted to have this conversation with you, so hopefully this will work.
So let's start off with one question on Donald Trump here, and that is, how do you think the Republican Party reconciles having put all of their cards in the Trump deck, knowing that the guy is going to go scorched earth and never cede power to Ron DeSantis or anyone, with the fact that they'll likely want to win moving forward, and that'll probably mean at some point not nominating the guy who's already lost in elections in 2018, 2020, and 2022? Like, how do they deal with the Frankenstein's monster that they created?
Well, there are a few different steps in what you're laying out. So here's what we know. When it comes to parties in a binary system that is fundamentally zero sum, meaning they win because the other one loses, winning is everything. And that's the only thing that explains them getting this caught up with Trump in the first place. Not a real conservative, doesn't check many or if any of the boxes that usually mattered to that party, except the biggest box that needs the biggest check, which is, can he win? And that was the deal that they made. Now, you can say, well, that's what every party does. Yes, but Trump was always a perversion of the underlying idealism and the intellectual construct of what was the conservative movement. He's not a conservative, really, in any way. So they only made this move because they had to, because he was beating them and they were scared. And this was very much in contrast to the methodical, thoughtful, deliberative, consistent move that the GOP has made on the state level. They have had a very consistent campaign of winning state legislative seats and governorships that help them deal with districting, that improve their lot beyond where they should be nationally, because they're at a big registration disadvantage nationally. So that methodical nature and what they had been about and that discipline was completely disrupted by the Trump move. And now, look, there's so many different cliches and metaphors and stories that go with what happens when you make a bad choice. But now they are where they are. And the question is, how do they get anywhere else? That's a two-part answer for me. One, Trump is helping them by doing what he does worst, which is, what we see right now between the trading cards and all that other BS. But the second one is a transcendent newness. Will that be DeSantis? I have a big question mark in the charisma column for him. But that's what gets them somewhere else. What it should be is a populist move, is a ground up move. But I don't know that our party politics allows for that right now. I think the only way they get away from Trump is the collection of his implosion continued and a transcendent figure that grabs the base and hopefully more for them.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I think, like you said, I mean, he's helping expedite that process right now, not just by, the shameless grifting, but at some point Republicans are going to have to accept the fact that if they want to win elections, it's not going to be the guy who's just lost them their third election. So remains to be seen. But I want to talk about your show here. And you recently spoke with Ukrainian President Zelensky. And one point that you touched upon was this idea that the war already happened. That's obviously not the case. We're heading into winter. Russia's trying to take down Ukraine's energy grid. Back home in the U.S., the funding for that effort is going to be largely dependent on a political process where Republicans have already decided that Ukraine is some liberal agenda item. And so out of pure partisan spite, many of them on the right are opposing it. What do you see as the outcome here? Do you think that Republicans will ultimately blink? And what would you say to Republicans who don't think that helping fund this war is important?
Let's chew on it a little bit. What do they think about Ukraine? The GOP has had a mixed mentality when it comes to foreign activities. Isolationism, what used to be jingoism, had found a home there, but not always. Not always. There are certainly many examples in recent history of a robust notion of fueling the move of democracy, of what is seen as an expansive idea of America's interests abroad. So it's a mixed bag. So where are we on Ukraine? I think right now their analysis is completely limited to two things. One, that their base is not necessarily xenophobic. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, but they definitely want to stay close. And yes, they'll argue the money thing, but that's an article of convenience. We always have money for whatever people want. The other thing is Zelensky. Zelensky is bad for Trump. Zelensky was part of going after Trump. And that colored the entire situation, much to the bemusement of, not amusement, but bemusement of Ukraine's president. He can't believe that some stupid phone call and Trump trying to put the arm on him for something could be seen as tantamount to reason to let him get slaughtered by Russia. But I think it could be. And I think McCarthy saying there's going to be no blank check for Ukraine is a very gentle suggestion at this reality. I think that's why Zelensky came to America. He left a war zone. We haven't really seen this since Churchill. And I'm not saying that Zelensky is Churchill. I'm just saying that Churchill took time to come here to massage America on its own ground many times. And it was very important because we were a very reluctant participant in World War II. People don't know that. And Zelensky is coming here not because he needs the frequent flyer miles and not because he's looking for a photo op. He's desperate. And he's really worried about not having what he needs to hold off what he believes is coming from Russia. Now there's another question, which is, why don't we care more? What's your thought on that?
I mean, look, my thought is that it's easy for the Republican Party to not to rely on people's ignorance about foreign affairs, but also honestly, and this is going to be as jaded as it gets, but I think it's just a matter of Democrats are in support of it, and so Republicans aren't. And it's just as simple and reductive as that. I mean, I think that it's obviously tantamount in this world to care about supporting democracies, especially in the face of invasions by an autocratic nation led by a warmongering lunatic. But as bad as it is, that's all it really comes down to. It's that Democrats want to fund this effort, and so just as reactionary as it gets, Republicans say no because that's the calcification of our politics right now. I don't know if you agree with that.
I think you make some good points, though it's sad because you're so young and yet you're
sitting here with a cigarette.
Look, first of all, a good line from Jordan Peterson is always fear a single factor explanation to a complicated situation. And I think you're avoiding that well. And too often in our politics, we do single factor explanations because it's more about agendas than it is really assessing any situation fairly. Because again, the party system is poison to promoting a more perfect union. I've never been more sure of that than I am today. People need to leave the parties. Lawmakers leaving the parties is more complicated because they got in because of the party. So for them to now become independent is a little bit of a dicey proposition. But I think people should leave their party affiliations. I think it's the best way to get the parties until we have more of them or more choice or a different system to cater to people on an independent basis. The more independent the electorate is, the less of this binary zero-sum stuff we'll have. Now, to what you were saying, I do believe that the Republicans, therefore, are not reading the room correctly because veterans are very much in favor of helping Ukraine because of their feelings about Russia and Russia as a contagion and the desire to expand once again and the message it sends to China. It's no coincidence that Zelensky comes here and Putin sends an envoy to Beijing because President Xi not only has a ton of leverage over us because of how much of our debt China owns, but he likes annexing. He likes this. He likes this vibe of Russia getting away with it. Now, what does it mean to us? Here's my biggest concern. I spent so much of my life in covering the wars after 9/11 in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan. We were never going to make those places anything like what we value in America. And everybody knew it. I'm not saying people didn't need our help. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying Ukraine is such a no-brainer for what we say we're about. Oh, but there's no terror there. Yeah, but it wasn't just about terror. We all knew that was an idea. And every time that you have people who are disaffected, poor, uneducated, they're going to be angry and they're going to be susceptible to messaging. And in that case, the messaging is extreme Islamism, and it works. But in Ukraine, you can actually get something there. And you can actually have a bulwark against Russia right there. And we just seem, now people will say, what are you talking about? We've given them billions of dollars. And, hey, do you know how much money we've given to the Middle East that will never see a return on any investment? That was also stolen in a, tremendous amount and going to all these payoffs and people who are never, that place is exactly like when we found it. So that's the part I don't get, is that these people even look like Americans. Like, I don't get why there's not more of an affinity to the cause. There was for a moment. I was out of the job, but I was watching. And there was a flash with blue and yellow flags, and you still see them on people's Twitter avatars. But the constancy isn't there anymore. You don't see people like me in Ukraine anymore. I'm going to go in the beginning of the year. It's like a battle for me to get over there because they're like, oh, nobody cares. Sometimes you have to go because nobody cares.
I think that what we saw in after 9/11, for example, when everybody came together and then George W. Bush was reelected on the back of what happened in 9/11, I think that can't happen right now because I don't think that it's in the Republicans' interest to allow that to happen again. I think they saw that. And if they say, okay, everybody comes together because there's a war effort, that's not going to help them politically. And so I think they have a vested interest. And we've seen that party is more important than country or democracy more broadly in the world. And so, when there was that flash, that moment where everybody was pro-Ukraine because it's the right thing to do, and that was so obvious, at least in the beginning, I think that the political incentives weren't there to the point where you needed that turn. You needed to create that conflict. And that's why you have guys like Tucker Carlson who've come out outright and said, I am supporting Russia. Because if there isn't that political conflict, if everything is, symbiotic, then that doesn't help create like the conflict that they need to then, create that contrast so that one party can be here and the other party can be here.
You're right. But sometimes you have to be about something bigger. And sometimes sometimes there's opportunity in that. I'm not being idealistic. I'm saying sometimes there's opportunity in that. And because Ukraine has made a mistake in my mind in hiding the death and the slaughter. And I get why they're doing it. I understand the morale reasons. I think it's a mistake. I think that if Americans saw how butchered people get in these situations and how absolutely arbitrary the attacks are, that's what surprised me most when I was over there. The reporting of that it's like, yeah, if we kill women, we kill women, we kill kids, whatever it is, whoever we hit. We're not used to that being so flagrant. And I think it's a mistake on Ukraine's part to hide it. But look, I get what their mentality is and I get what their concerns are. I do think there's an opportunity in this. But you're probably right that ultimately the safest play is oppositional, just out of advantage and to keep the fight home, because home is always going to matter more than away. And until Russia does something else to somewhere else, and it seems like it is NATO, I think that it'll stay the way it is now, even with Zelensky coming here. I don't think that there's any will for Americans to be on the ground there. And it'll just stay the way it is. How much money? Who cares? Really, who cares? In terms of who's going to win the next election, who's going to be president of the United States, I don't think what happens in Ukraine will matter enough. So the best position is, Tucker Carlson's a great straight read on the righty fringe mentality of how they stay relevant. And that, it's good to have that, actually. It's good to have something that's such an ugly and obvious indicator of what you have to be careful about.
Yeah. Chris, what do you hope to do with your show?
My show is the first show I've ever had that actually has a plan of what to do with it. Because every other show I've ever had or been a part of was just about, hey, take it as it comes. We try to get it right. We try to fight the good fight. And, we see what comes our way. And if that means I got to get out of the house and go to a place that's a bad place for a while, that's what I do. If that means you have to get in the investigative business right now, or the crime business or the confrontation business, whatever it is, you suit to fit. And now I'm not doing that. My show is for, when it comes to politics, okay? When it comes to politics, my show is for independents. My show is anti-partisan. It's not just nonpartisan. It's anti-partisan. The party system is a problem. It is stopping us. It will always be party first. It has always been party first. I am not making this up. You have never had leaders in this country say anything else. Washington, the Federalist Papers, Teddy Roosevelt, Monroe. I mean, it goes on and on. It's not even easy. It's not even a hard argument. Nobody could win the debate otherwise. Factions, then into parties, then into machines, and then whatever we have now, which is an amalgam. It's always been part of the problem. And if I'm going to be in this game, I'm going to play it the way I want to. And the way I want to play it is parties are bad. You should be an independent. And I'm not saying they're bad people. That's cheap. It's easy. But when it comes to politics, I'm not simply just populist. It's that people need to leave the parties. We have to attack the party system and show it for what it is. And we have to make government responsive to the people that they govern and not vice versa. And some will say, well, that's not journalism. I disagree. If journalism is an expression of hope for the future and communicated in truth, then that's exactly what this is. Objectively, the parties are a problem. And the reason that we cater to them is because it works for ratings. And I want it to be better than that. Now, non-political or political adjacent, I don't cover the insider wars the way I used to. Even as a referee, I do much less Trump stuff, insider stuff, who's zooming who, what is and what isn't at the investigations. I'm light on that. And I do politics adjacent, meaning, hey, you want to talk about energy and why gas prices are so high? How come we dismiss nuclear power? I grew up thinking that every time the word nuclear was said, we started to glow. What's really behind it? What's behind long haul and COVID? Asking those second and third questions and talking a lot about self-care and personal struggle and what we all deal with. I want the show to be more of a salon effect of a discussion about what everybody has to deal with. And I use myself more than I ever considered doing in the past as a lens into relatability to struggle. I do it a lot more on the Chris Cuomo Project, the podcast. I actually have specific segments that are set up for, listen, I'm a fortunate person in many regards, but I know what struggle is. I know what it is to deal with your own health and how and therapy and what that means and why I value it. And I want to talk to that so that you don't have to talk about yourself. You can just hear me, go through my own flaws and my own failings. And, if that shines a light for you on what you can do for yourself, great. And I never did that before, but I'm older now. And I was given the gift of getting knocked on my ass. So I had time to think about why I do what I do and what matters to me about it and what boxes I want to check. Everybody's checking boxes sometimes, whether you should or you shouldn't. I've been number one at a big shop. I know what that's like. I know what that relevance is, that resonance is, that shine. I've had it. I wasn't happy despite that. So I don't need that to be what I want to be and who I want to be and how I want to be. So that's what the show is about. If it's about politics, it's for independence and it's anti-partisan. And if it's about what I like to cover on a regular basis, it's going to be about the things that don't get covered as much because I got a small audience. We're building something. So I might as well do what I want to do instead of following the pack because they're not watching me anyway.
Look, as far as the end of the two-party system goes, you know this better than anyone. The side to blink and start voting third party doesn't get stronger. It just fractures one side and allows the other side to consolidate all the power. And that sucks, but that's just how it is, isn't it? Like in this country, that's how it would play out. So isn't it like while the idea behind this might be virtuous, like in reality, when this actually plays itself out, it's just going to hurt the side that's actually agreeing to these terms.
It is true, but a few points on it. You're right. I can't rebut it. It's all that has ever happened. Whenever, even back to the days of Bull Moose with Teddy Roosevelt, he didn't win until he went back into the game. That's why I say that it's not about a third party. It's about a third, fourth, and fifth. If you look at other major democracies in Europe, less so in South America, even if you just want to look at the direct analog of the UK, They have two main parties, but there are three other parties that are relevant in seats in parliament. They have to make deals. And as dysfunctional as it seems there or in Italy or in Israel, they still deal with the business of the people better than we do. Let's put that to the side. Virtue. It is virtuous. It's a good word. I appreciate you using it. I believe it's all that matters. As an old, flawed man whose life is very often a function of what I've done wrong and how I'm haunted by it, pursuit of virtue is all that matters. So that even if it is impractical, even if it's not the way it works, even if those in power control how it works and they like the party system the way it is because that's how they got there and that's how they stay there, and that's why they won't even put in term limits in Congress, you still should push for what is virtuous. Because just like in life, I screw up on a regular basis, on a daily, if not hourly basis of not doing what I want to do. And making bad choices and hurting people that I don't want to hurt, I shouldn't hurt, hurting myself. You still just keep trying to do the right thing. And that must be applied to politics. So we give politics a pass. We don't treat it the way we treat every other dynamic in our life. You would never allow someone on your podcast to talk about anything else the way people will talk about politics. You'd never hire anyone to do anything for your fast-growing digital business or anything you have going on in your life the way you do what you'll let a politician sell you on. So I really do believe that virtue matters, and we have to get back to it. And you could say, yeah, but it's not going to happen. I don't disagree. It's unlikely. But look at what we're doing right now. Our presidential election comes down to like 30 counties across the country. And people, in America, being independent is so cool. We all say we're free, man. And don't mess with me, man. You'd have to take me out before you take my tongue. Yeah. And then we default to these tribes and these teams, and we surrender our individuality again and again and again. That's why I started free agent. A free agent, we know what that means from sports. And if you're a big brain, you know what it is from philosophy. But everybody says they're independent. If you ask somebody, hey, you a free agent in terms of your politics, you free thinker? Yeah, of course I am. Really? No, you're not. Most of us aren't. We default to the teams and the tribes, and we just come out with a reason of convenience. That's why I started free agent and I sell the merch. The money I'm putting into a kitty to then make donations to people who do good stuff, try and make their communities better. It's not a revenue generating enterprise, or profit generating enterprise. But I want people to wear their independence, literally and figuratively. I really do that. Messaging matters. One of the things Trump knows very well is I say to you, hey, is this podcast a good podcast? People say it's a good podcast. This is a really good podcast. Repetition matters, messaging matters. And I think that somebody has to want to do this. And that's why I agree with you that I don't think it comes from the power side, even though the power should be on the people side. I think people have to leave the parties. I think that that's something we can do. I think that's something you can do. I can do. And yes, as a journalist, it's easy. We all register independent anyway. But I think that that's the answer. The answer is for people to say, no, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. You got to earn it. You got to earn it. What are you going to do for me? I don't care what you just said about that guy. I don't care. I'm not going to vote for you because he's worse. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work anywhere else in my life. It's not going to work here either. I think that's our best bet, and I don't think it's just theoretical.
While you were at CNN, I think it's safe to say that you were on the Democrats' team, and you may reject that, but that's my opinion. I think it would be a lot of people's opinions. So grant me that, and then I'll get to this question here.
I absolutely will not grant you that. Okay. But you are open to your opinion.
Okay, and I don't mean any offense by this question, but since leaving CNN, you've called for the end of the two-party system. Do you think that that's stemming from a degree of resentment owed to feeling like you were alienated by your party because of the way the end of the CNN tenure came about? Like that's pushed you away from the two-party system? Because I don't think that you at CNN would be advocating for the end of the two-party system like you are now.
That is true. However, I have always had problems with the party, but I evolved because I was trying to figure out how I can help. I have zero resentment towards CNN or certainly the Democratic Party. I don't give a shit about the Democratic Party. They never had me.
Or not necessarily the Democrats, but the viewers. Like if your viewers were like liberals, and then there came a point where it was like very easy to feel like you were alienated by those same people who you'd served as an anchor for all of those years. Like,
no, I don't feel
does that
like
push
that.
you away?
No, I don't. I don't blame people for anything. They had nothing to do with this. This was politics. This was politics of new ownership, and this was politics of media. Media resented my brother being on my show to begin with. I always knew that would happen. I just didn't know how high the price would be. I also didn't anticipate him having all those problems. And this was about ownership at CNN, not liking the look, and a boss deciding to save himself by getting rid of me. And I understand it. I'm not hateful. I'm not even resentful. It was wrong, and I don't like it. CNN, in my opinion, is the best media agency in the world. Their audience is not decidedly left, by the way. It probably breaks that way. Most audiences do, okay? So I don't see that as some type of bias. And I just refuse to accept the idea that going after Donald Trump's historical fictions and lies and malice towards not just the institutions of our democracy, but of our media and our society does not make me a lefty. Last night, just keep it to CNN, I would have Trump supporters and people from the right on more than anybody else at CNN. And in-house and at a house, people didn't like it. In the media, people said, oh, you're giving them a platform. All they do is lie. I disagree. I disagreed then. I disagree now. And I would fight with them. See, that was the difference. Is I'm not going to have someone come on and just give them a platform. I've never done that anywhere for anything. Okay. That's why I wind up getting into fights with people. Now, not fights the way Tucker Carlson does it or theatricality. I've had almost every guest I've ever been in an argument with on my show thank me for the appearance at the end of it. You can go back and check. And it's because they know I'm not coming from a bad place. I just think that person on that point is full of shit and that they're selling something. And it's wrong. And I will say that. And they'll say, no, you're wrong. But at the end of it, it's not personal. I'm not going to say anything personal about them. That's not how you win an argument. That's Twitter. So never playing for the Democratic team. If your name is Cuomo and you're running as a Democrat, I will vote for you. Okay. My father's Democratic Party no longer exists. Okay. My brother is a different kind of Democrat than my father was. And I had problems with both of them. I'm a rich guy. I hate taxes. So the idea that I'm a Democrat is just fundamentally untrue. You don't find a lot of gun-owning lefties. But I do think that it's a logical question that you ask. Did I make a change because I'm angry? And the answer is yes, but not because I'm angry at CNN, not because I'm angry at the audience, not because I'm angry at some political party. It's that I'm angry at myself I was angry at myself for not finding a way to be more helpful to the change that is obvious and that we need and the advocacy that we need on people's behalf. That's what it's about for me. It's not about being rueful. It's not about going after anybody. It's not about the past. It really isn't.
And do you feel like given where you are right now, and it seems like you're happier where you are, and with the direction that your career is going to take, and with the show that you're able to make, do you not regret how everything played out because it got you to this point, or do you still have regrets about how everything played out?
Look, that's the right way to see it. As somebody who clings very closely to the ideals and rules of stoicism, that's absolutely the way to do it, is that everything that happened in your life got to where you are, so you can't really regret any of it.
Yeah.
I also think that is almost magical thinking.
Yeah, it's like easier said than done.
I do not like how I got to where I am. I do not like where I am in a lot of ways. I mean, News Nation, I'm very thankful to Nexstar for giving me the opportunity and seeing it. I'm happy with my decision to not pursue any other media opportunities. I don't think it would have been a good fit anywhere else. I would have had problems. If I were at an MSNBC, I would have had problems with that audience because they're coming for confirmation every night that they're still right and that the right is wrong. They wouldn't have been happy with me. I would have had sparring matches with the other anchors. I don't want to go back to any of the big three news agencies because I don't like what they do, and you can't be on every day in a way that I want to be on. I know I'm respected enough and good enough at the craft to be in those places, but like even 60 Minutes is not 60 Minutes anymore. It's boring, and a lot of the storytelling is tired, and it's rarely relevant, and you're not on enough. So I really believed that the digital space was the right space, and all I was going to do was the podcast. The Chris Cuomo project. I love it. I own it. I love having conversations with people where I can say, yes, this is only going to be what I want it to be. And I don't give a shit what anybody else thinks because it's my business, literally and figuratively. I do have more freedom at News Nation than I've ever had anywhere else before. I do every night exactly what I want to do. I've never had that at any other news agency. And not because of something sinister. It's just groupthink and having a different institutional structure that News Nation doesn't have because it's still evolving as a culture. So, no, I don't like how I got where I am. I don't like this process. It was unfair. I was lied about. And that's why I'm going through litigation, because I'll deal with it there. I don't blame CNN. I don't blame the people there. They're great people. I wish them well. I hate that the media has made it sport going after CNN, and it's almost purely out of jealousy. Everybody was covering Trump the way CNN was. Were they doing it as much? Were they doing it less? To me, that's irrelevant. They just weren't as good at it. And Trump didn't see them as threatening as he did with CNN. So he made CNN relevant, and that made everybody else jealous. And I lived it. And I've been in this business for 25 years. I know it up, down, left, right. There are no surprises for me. So I don't buy into this CNN hate parade. And they'll be not back because they haven't gone anywhere. But when the news changes and it's about coverage and it's about intensity and purpose, unless the new management really screws it up, CNN's going to be right where it's always been, which is going to be at the front of the pack, at least since I knew it. Before Zucker was there, CNN was an afterthought. It was just like a panic button. We used to call them the redcoats, and we just used to look at CNN for where to set up our cameras in a live situation. What areas were they in, so that we could then go there at ABC News and dominate the coverage. But look, I am where I am, and all I know is that there's certain things I control and certain things I don't. What I control about my past is how I litigated and how I will never settle for anything less than what I want to be known. It's not about money. And I control the show I do. I control how I feel about where I am. And I control why I'm doing what I do. I don't control what happened in the past. I don't control how people feel about it. It pisses me off every time somebody says, I was fired because I helped my brother go after his accusers and manipulate the media. That's all bullshit, and I hate hearing it. But the only thing that'll make that stop is to have the people who started it having to own that that's not true. But that's the past. And the truth is, and you probably have learned this, people don't care about you, man. They don't care about you. They care about themselves and their life. And that's where my focus has to be as a storyteller and as an advocate for their interests within the field of the media, is they care about them and what matters to them, not me, not my story. They've already made their decisions about me. And if they're with me, they're with me. If they're not, they're not. And there's very little I can do to change that. So it's not about being resentful. It's not about acting out and trying to punish. That's not who I am, and that's not what I'm about, and that wouldn't be helpful to anybody else.
So where can we see and hear more from you?
You can keep inviting me on, and I can invite you on. And I believe in that. I really believe in a salon effect. I'm very careful about which podcasts I go on and what I do, because I know it would be better for growing the Chris Cuomo project to be everywhere and go smoke a doobie with Rogan or Maher or whatever it is. But I want to be more selective about that. Not because I'm anti-weed. I love weed. I was one of the first card-carrying THC people that I knew. I have my not that you need it necessarily in New York, but I wanted people to understand that I really believe in it as medicine, and I really have all but stopped drinking because it just doesn't work for me, because it's just too easy to use it in a way that you don't need to. But I have the Chris Cuomo Project podcast, which is free and it will always be free. And I do some really cool stuff on that. I have the big guests that you need to have, but I do sessions where I just talk about what I've learned about struggle in my own life and the lives of people around me. And there's so many people who deal with the same kinds of things. We all think that our suffering is special and that while pain is personal, it's so common. We're dealing with the same things. And if we just talked about it more, there'd be so much alleviating of what people just struggle with and they don't have to. And News Nation, it's a growing thing. If you want to watch it, it's 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock Eastern. The show is different than any other show. I mean, last night I had Zelensky, on a recent show, I had Zelensky, O'Reilly, and Joe Manchin on.
Yeah. The dinner party right there.
And, look, by the way, I'm working on that. I'm working on a show where I sit around and eat with some people and just talk about what comes up. I actually think that'd be a really interesting format. And people do loosen up, even though they all know they're still on camera.
Yeah.
But I'm looking for different venues and ways to have the right kinds of conversations.
Let me ask you this, like why just as a quick aside, why do this show? Because if you are selective, this is, I mean, I'm a partisan, I'm a progressive activist. My views are kind of antithetical to the idea that we need an end to the two-party system, because my whole thing is that, like, I recognize, not that you don't recognize, but I'm recognizing right now the dangers that are posed by the Republican Party, and the only antidote to that is to make sure that Democrats get elected to keep these people who are dangerous away.
One, I like you, and you believe what you say. You're not saying it because you think it's going to get you somewhere. That's been my assessment of you, and otherwise I'd be tearing you up in this interview, even though it's on your podcast. So that's why I'm here. And but lefties aren't going to like you hearing that. They got problems with their party too. Nobody hates on their party the way Democrats do. You guys don't hold together well, and you don't message your successes well. And that's one of the reasons that you're so screwed in our immigration debate right now. And you better focus on that, and you better figure out how to secure that border, how to deal with how you screwed up on Title 42. I don't understand. COVID's supposed to be a concern everywhere in society except on the border. And the Republicans have the same problem in the obverse. COVID's not a big deal anywhere except on the border, where nobody can come in if they've been within a mile of somebody who has COVID. Look, it's ugly politics, and we got to do better. And I believe that the power that makes that better resides from people not giving support to a party putatively, automatically. And are Democrats the answer to problems with Republicans? Maybe. Depends on the Democrat and how good they are at what they're supposed to do. Are you right that the two parties are not equal offenders? Hell yes, you're right. There's no way that you can look at what's happening in the Republican Party right now and say, oh, yeah, but the same shit's happening on the left. Look at AOC. Look at Antifa. Look at BLM. That is a specious analysis on a flawed premise. And I have never bought into that. I get hit with that both sides stick every time. That's a bullshit stick, man. Balance is a real thing, and you have to look at it. And I love many of the ideals of liberalism, and I think there is a place for balance with conservatism. And there always has been, until very recently, when the parties figured out it's just better to hate the other. You don't have to work with them. Cooperation isn't in your interest. And that's terrible for us. And I think the only way to get away from it is for people to demand more of government. Because as long as it's just they're worse, you see what happens in government. They don't do things. How can they not pass this immigration bill? How can they not do this? How can they not give dreamers a pathway to citizenship? Everybody knows they did nothing wrong. 3 out of 4 Americans agree on it. It's such a WTF. It's so maddening to me. But it's the only thing that works in this process. And that's what I want people to get away from. I'm not anti-Democrat. I'm a Cuomo, for God's sake. I'm not anti-Democrat. I'm not anti-GOP. I married into a Republican family. I just don't like the way they do business. And I don't like the way Biden is doing business. You don't trumpet your successes enough. You don't explain what's going on. How did you guys not make more out of the semiconductor situation? How did you let the right make that situation about Biden being in Arizona and not wanting to go to the border. Are you kidding me? You've brought more manufacturing into this country than Trump even lied about bringing in. And you guys let it become about him not wanting to go to the border? What is going on with you?
That's all fair assessments. We'll leave it there. Chris, I'd love to have you back on. So in the meantime, happy holidays, and thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it.
You are very appreciated and respected for having someone come on that's not going to say what you want. That is very rare. And I think it makes you a stronger advocate. I've been paying attention to you for a while. And your side, I hate that there are sides, but liberalism is real and it's deep and it's valuable. And they need people who see the playing field and not just play it opportunistically. You guys lead with your heart too much for that. But you are part of the future of that movement as someone who sees the state of play and understands it and doesn't just hope that if they pretend it's not there, everything will go the right way. There are real problems. You guys have great opportunities. You're a little jammed up going into the presidential. You got a bad map in the Senate that you're going to have to deal with.
Yep.
But you're nowhere as bad a situation as the Republicans. Yeah. I don't know if Biden's going to be your guy. I think you got a problem either way. I think if he's your guy, you got a problem. I think if he's not your guy, you got a problem, because Democrats need to love their candidate and you need a transcendent figure, and you're due one. I just don't know who it is, but I'd love to talk to you about it. I wish you well. I want good ideas and people who are fighting the good fight for the right reasons to matter in this country. I'm not against anybody.